Bitcoin is up 9% this week and just hit a 6-week high above 65,000 euro. This is the Bitcoin Weekly by Blockrise. Here's what actually matters. Welcome to my very first episode. Every Tuesday, I break down the most important Bitcoin developments, the numbers, the money flows, and what's happening next. No hype, just perspective. Let us get into it. So let us start with the numbers. The Bitcoin price ended the week around 65,000 euros, equal to $74,000, and with a weekly low of 59,000 euro. The price has moved back above the 50-day average, which is a sign that short-term momentum is improving. However, the 200-day average still sits at 80,000 euros, so we are still 20% below that longer-term trend. Now the biggest story of this week. Bitcoin has bounced about 25% from its February low. The US conflict is escalating, oil prices are rising, and the stock market is under pressure. Despite all of that, Bitcoin is outperforming the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, and gold since the conflict has started. For the Eurozone specifically, rising energy prices are adding to inflation concerns, which make the job of the EU central bank even harder. Whether Bitcoin holds up as a resilient asset through this kind of uncertainty is one of the most important questions of the year, and so far the answer is encouraging. Moving on to the money flows. The world's largest Bitcoin treasury company, added another 22,000 Bitcoin to the balance sheet this week at a cost of about $1.6 billion. This brings their total holdings to over 761,000 Bitcoin. This week's purchase was largely funded through their STRC offering, which is their preferred stock with currently 11.5% yield. And they're not the only ones. In Japan, Metaplanet raised $255 million specifically to accelerate their Bitcoin purchases. They are targeting 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027. What started with one company is becoming a global corporate treasury strategy. And then two more stories worth mentioning. First, Tether, the world's largest stablecoin issuer, announced a strategic investment in Arc Labs, a company building payment infrastructure directly on the Bitcoin network. Their goal is to bring stablecoins like USDT to Bitcoin, which would scale Bitcoin even more for everyday transactions. And second, on the other end of the spectrum, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson called Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme this week. The pushback from the industry was immediate, but it's a good reminder that mainstream understanding of Bitcoin still has a long way to go. And lastly, two things on my radar for this week. First, the US Federal Reserve will announce its interest rate decision tomorrow, March 18. Most expect the rates to remain unchanged, but any signal about future changes could move the market. And second, I'm watching whether the positive ETF streak extends to a fourth consecutive week of inflows. That is it for this week's Bitcoin Weekly. As always, this is not financial advice, just my perspective on what's happening. Do your own research and verify your Bitcoin. See you next Tuesday.